Greetings and salutations. Hope this finds you well. Quick shout out to the 2 Uber comrades on Patreon supporting my content in this channel, Independent Left News, and my partner Rosa. Definitely check out Independent Left News. They're a great resource. So I came across this video earlier today by Vijay Prashad. He was giving this talk, the People's Forum, New York City. The title is the same title as my video. What's the left to do in a world on fire? China and the left. I think that's a very interesting and important question. So I thought I would play some of that and we would see what kind of points Vijay brings up. He is an amazing, revolutionary voice, always standing up for the interest of the, working class, the vulnerable, the marginalized all over the world. Highly recommend his book, Washington Bullets. That's the only book of his that I have read, but he has a lot of other, material out there. He also works, or is maybe the director of, I think it's like the Tricontinental Institute, something like that. So here's Vijay Prashad. Let's see what he's talking about here.
Exactly that. And of course, the United States government did exactly that. There were what, 1 million, 11, 10, 15 million people around the world marching against the illegal war on Iraq. Didn't make a jot of difference. Didn't make a jot of difference. So much for democracy.
Right.
How many hours people in this room spent in prison cells?
I mean, the United States has never been or had a, democracy. We like to say that the United States is democracy, but it's never been that. It's founded on the genocide of the indigenous people and the enslavement of African Americans. And it was funded by a bunch of white supremacist slave owners, right?
Of us handcuffed to bicycle racks because we were demonstrating against the war on Iraq. By the way, when I said an illegal war, again, it's not my opinion. UN Secretary General Kofi Annan in 2004 said that to BBC. He said it's an illegal war. Why is it illegal? Because, friends, we have some laws.
The war of aggression.
Some laws. Even international.
But the U.S. doesn't follow that, The United States empire does. Hey, Huzzah. Just having a little chat here, listening to Vijay Prashad. Glad you can join, comrade.
The laws. For instance, for God's sake. I mean, I'm not even talking about the Communist Manifesto, okay? I mean,
I like
I'm not,
this shirt. I want to get a shirt like that.
I'm talking about
nice.
The United Nations Charter. I mean, the country that violates the UN Charter the most
is the United States, as they always do. The United States is the biggest purveyor of death and destruction in the world, and you have to be kidding yourself to think otherwise, or just really drunk on American exceptionalism, right? Vijay is cool. He's talking about Vax IP waivers the other day and how the media isn't asking that question. Is that IP intellectual like property? Yes, definitely. And what was it? The Bill Gates and the Gates Foundation. There were some, they were going to share, these drug manufacturers, or maybe some of the governments were going to force them to share that. But then Gates and the Gates Foundation stepped in and said, nope, can't have you doing that because, Bill Gates and his foundation and the pharmaceutical industry are like that, right?
Is the United States of America.
Yes. Preach.
It's not China.
Nope, not Russia.
It's not Russia. It's not India. It's not Mexico. It's certainly not Cuba.
Nope.
It's certainly not.
But if you listen to mainstream media, whether liberal or conservative outlets, it's China's the boogeyman. Russia's out to get you. No, it's actually the U.S. empire. Vijay's completely correct.
Cuba. It's the United States of America. the United States of America is the biggest scofflaw on the planet. The United States of America didn't even have the decency to sign the Treaty of Rome. Now, you wonder, what the hell is the Treaty of Rome?
Yeah, what is that? Good question.
And why did I say it so emphatically?
Please tell us.
And that's because there still hasn't been a viral TikTok video explaining the Treaty of Rome.
Yes, we need one of those. Somebody get on that.
I'm not going to make one.
But somebody else should. I'm not on TikTok either.
Make one. Once again, putting it off on me. The Treaty of Rome, friends, is the reason we have a so-called international criminal court.
In the chat, so I remember.
It's a so-called international criminal court because the biggest international criminal
United States
is not a signatory to it. And the biggest international criminal is?
United States.
The United States of Amnesia. Rafiq Kataria, one of the great poets of our time, friends. One of the great poets.
I'm going to have to remember that. That is so on point. The United States of Amnesia, not the United States of America, the United States of Amnesia. That is just a great microcosm of what the United States is, right? U.S. has their Hague invasion. Yeah, I mean, United States of Amnesia. That's just perfect. I'm gonna write
that. United States of Amnesia. The United States of Amnesia, America, whatever you want to call it, the U.S., etc., didn't sign the Treaty of Rome. Will not allow a file to be opened to investigate
Israel, right?
U.S. war crimes in Afghanistan and in Iraq. Mike Pompeo.
And they're also preventing the ICC from investigating war crimes that the Israeli apartheid regime has also committed as well. So, point well taken, Vijay.
Of the CIA, Secretary of State under Donald Trump, future President of the United States of America.
Pompeo.
That's what you say. You know how it goes in this great United States of America. You have President Nixon, and then you say, it can't get worse than this.
Reagan. Yeah, he's right. It did get worse.
And then you get Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
And then you say, it can't get worse than this.
George W. Bush was worse than Reagan.
Then you get George W. Bush.
He's right.
Can't get worse than this. And then you get Barack Obama, and it's the worst thing possible.
Oh,
okay, I meant Donald Trump. Okay, I know. Some of you have incipient democratic sensibilities. You don't want me to criticize Obama. Okay, we'll put that off for another day. That's okay.
Criticize away. He deserves it. Oh, nice, Mike. Awesome.
The United States of America cannot have a file opened at the International Criminal Court on its behavior in Afghanistan or Iraq, and Mike Pompeo had the indecency to sanction Special Prosecutor at the ICC, Fatih Bensouda, and her family.
I remember that.
They would not be allowed to get visas. She was not allowed to get a visa to enter the United States to brief the UN Security Council because she had the nerve to open a file on US criminal activity in Afghanistan and Iraq.
The horror. How dare they?
There were war crimes committed. And you know why we know that. We know that thanks to the bravery of Chelsea Manning and the WikiLeaks organization led by Julian Assange.
Yep. Free Julian Assange.
We know this.
All political prisoners.
Because Chelsea Manning bravely downloaded enough evidence of serious war crimes conducted by the United States in Iraq and Afghanistan. We know that. We know that. There's enough evidence out there. But Mike Pompeo decided, no, the ICC doesn't have...
And look at the price, that Julian Assange continues to pay for exposing the crimes of the U.S. empire and other governments around the world. And Biden administration, of course, has continued the prosecution of him, trying to extradite him to the United States for the crime of being a journalist. How dare he? How dare WikiLeaks?
The jurisdiction, actually, they don't mean doesn't have the jurisdiction. What they mean is they don't have the right
to investigate the U.S. empire for all the fucked up shit they did.
Because what they're saying is white supremacy does not have the right to be judged by anybody. After NATO bombed Libya,
yes,
the lead lawyer at NATO, Peter Olson,
and again, that Libya war invasion that happened under Obama. It was one of the most prosperous and successful states in the whole continent of Africa, but Gaddafi and his government weren't willing, didn't want to do the bidding of the U.S. empire, and so he had to go. The government had to go as a result. They literally brought back slavery to that country as a result of this U.S.-backed invasion of Libya.
Was asked by the United Nations to release bombing information so that the United Nations could judge whether NATO exceeded the mandate of UN Security Council 1973. That's what allowed NATO to bomb Libya under Charter 7 of the UN Charter.
What is CrowdStrike? CrowdStrike had zero evidence. What is CrowdStrike? Hazak, could you let me know in the comments? The hopes the whole Africa continent was on Libya. I mean, they had a very high standard of living. It seemed like the government there was actually trying to, improve the conditions for the masses. Not to say that there weren't contradictions and messed up things going on there, but obviously the place should have never been invaded, should have never had, war on that country. Oh, okay. They are the ones that manufactured the Russian hack for WikiLeaks. Okay, gotcha.
Chapter 7 of the UN Charter. Peter Olson wrote back and said, no, NATO does not commit war crimes.
Of course they don't. Of course they don't. Only these countries outside the sphere of NATO, those are the ones only capable of committing war crimes. It's Russia and China and Iran.
Savages commit war crimes. See, I know you're wondering, this is supposed to be about China. This is supposed to be about China. Why is he talking about the United States?
And I could listen to him talk like all day, just his wealth and breadth of knowledge and the analysis that he brings to these topics, as well as with, being humorous and entertaining. Like, he's such a treasure.
Because, friends, frankly, the United States does not have the right to judge anybody.
Yes, 100%. What trade did Gaddafi have with China? I'm not sure. That would be something interesting to look into. I'm not sure what type of relationship or partnership those two countries had. Something to look into. I'm not sure.
The United States does not have the right to judge anybody.
Yes, 100%.
And
Vijay.
As a subsection of that statement, the US left does not have the right to judge anybody.
China, yes, including China.
Because what gives the US left the right to do anything?
Yeah, I mean, he's got a point. Like, we need to kind of get our own house in order before we try to go start talking shit about China or these other socialist countries that aren't supposedly living up to our utopian ideals when they're actually fucking living it, right?
Only comes after the US left builds political power in the United States.
We don't have a whole lot right now, really.
First, you build power here, then let's talk.
Yes.
Otherwise, you're just a college professor. Otherwise, you're just a college professor.
And I believe Vijay, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he has his PhD. I'm going to Google that real quick.
Or you're somebody who has nothing better to do
And talk shit.
than go on the internet and harass political forces outside the United States. So that's the first point. Because secondly, it's not just that it's not just that the United States doesn't have the right to judge anybody. Look what the United States is
doing all around the world.
I mean, just think about this. I talked about Code Pink. Code Pink said in 2001, don't go to war in Afghanistan. The only elected official that joined Code Pink was Barbara Lee of California. Every single other member of the United States Congress enthusiast
voted for it. He's right. Barbara Lee, only person on the right side of history with that issue. And yes, I was right. Vijay Prashad does have a PhD from the University of Chicago.
Said, let's go ahead and bomb that shitty country. That's what they said. Every single elected official of the United States government said, let's go and destroy Afghanistan. 20 years later, the United States has been humiliated by the Afghans. Now, I'm no fan of the Taliban. Okay, I'm a Marxist. I'm a communist.
Same.
I believe in women's emancipation.
Preach.
I believe in gay rights. I believe in everything good, decent, and sensitive in the world, which basically is everything the Taliban does not believe in. Okay, so I'm not cheerleading for the Taliban. I think those guys are crazy, and I don't think they should be in power in Afghanistan. But let me tell you one thing. You can't defeat them by bombing them from the sky.
Tried that
you
for
just
20
can't do
years.
that. And that was the humiliation. The United States went all, we're coming, cowboy.
Well, also not to mention the fact that before the U.S. actually invaded Afghanistan and started that 20-year war and occupation on that country, completely disintegrating it into, the chaos that it is now, the Taliban actually offered to surrender, to leave power, but the U.S. didn't want that. They wanted to flex their muscle, as Vijay is talking about.
Boys, big bombers, big, special forces, Charlie's in town, etc. Got the big gun, I got the gear, and then the Taliban hiding behind a rock, bang, and Uncle Sam is like, "Where's the airport? I'm going home."
20
Thank
years
you for
later.
your service, sir. It's a humiliation, guys. It's a humiliation. Let's face it. What does Joe Biden do? Overseen a humiliation, airport not secured. There will never be another terrorist act. And then boom, there's a terrorist act. What the heck?
I don't know. I disagree, Mike. I don't think you could defeat them by bombing them unless you actually literally bomb that whole country, carpet bomb the whole country, killed every last man, women, and child. I feel like that would be the only way to defeat that type of force. I mean, we were there for fucking 20 years. We used all kinds of different weapons, from drone strikes to these huge, massive, cluster bombs, or what do they call it, bunker busters, etc. Much the same as how the U.S. left, Vietnam with its tail between its legs. The same thing kind of played out in Afghanistan, and I think it was Osama bin Laden who basically said that the United States was a paper tiger, and he's been proven correct on that point, right?
Hell do you call the explosion at the airport in Kabul? There will never be. It's incoherent, and the U.S. media is incoherent. Well, we've never had a terrorist attack. There's just a terrorist attack yesterday, man. What do you call that? That's an explosion at the Kabul airport. That's not an explosion.
And then the U.S. retaliated with that drone strike that killed 10 people. I think 8 of them, or 7 or 8 of them, were children. And anytime it's so Orwellian, the U.S. says we're going to these countries to root out the terrorists, but what they do by having these wars, by having these invasions, by having these occupying forces, it's the best recruiting tool for these radical jihadist forces, etc. It's a really great recruiting tool. It's oh, look what the United States is doing to your country. They're occupying it. they're murdering men, women, and children indiscriminately with these drone strikes. Maybe come join our side and fight against them, right? It's a very powerful recruiting tool. The U.S., invading, occupying these countries, destroying them, torturing people, etc. And actually, I believe that was one of Osama bin Laden's reasons for wanting to attack the United States, was because of the U.S. military presence in Saudi Arabia, this very holy place, for the Islamic religion.
That's right. Strange. They live in a strange world. They think we are strange. That's what I find funny. I meet my journalist friends and they're like, man, you're like a lunatic, And I'm like, I'm a lunatic. You're the lunatic. I mean, like there was an explosion at the airport, right?
Yeah.
What's that? Like, oh yeah, I forgot. Sorry. It's not a terrorist attack because guess what? Oh, Afghans died. I forgot.
It's only a terrorist attack if the U.S.
Afghans
people die.
If there had been more Americans killed, that
Then
would have been a terrorist. I forgot. Attack. Sorry. You're right. There hasn't been a terrorist attack since 9/11. Because since 9/11, Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State, they've mainly been killing Syrians, Kenyans, people in Uganda.
So that doesn't matter.
Sorry, I forgot. That's not a terrorist attack. That's just savages killing savages. Whole other different thing. It's only a terrorist act when white supremacy is poked in the eye. That's a terrorist act. I forgot. Therefore, how do they even imagine what they're saying to be credible?
Well, it's so just disconnected from reality, right? From the reality of what these policies mean for these people in those countries. Scott Horton of Anti-War had said bin Laden was Cain. Is that like the biblical reference to like Cain and Abel? Do you expand on a little bit that for me, Mike?
We've defeated the terrorists, and then boom, there's an explosion. Right after that humiliation, the United States knocks on the door of the Australians.
Uh-oh.
This is another credible country, guys.
Nope.
Knocks on the door. Scott Morrison, we have a proposition for you. And guess who else is coming? It's like one of those TV joke things with puppets, That's like, hey, I'm Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson, Scott Morrison, Joe Biden. Wow. What a threesome.
He's talking about
and then they come up with this
AUKUS thing, that ridiculous military partnership where they want to give Australia nuclear-powered submarines. Just again another provocation towards China. Just disgusting.
His name AUKUS. What the hell is that? AUKUS.
AUKUS, yeah.
It's terrifying to the people of the world. We're going to create an alliance called AUKUS.
It does sound a little creepy.
And we're going to have nuclear submarines, but it's not nuclear non-proliferation. Because we're not violating the NPT, which is the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Australia is not technically a nuclear power. You know that, right? Even though it's like a white country, basically. And, you sort of sometimes can be forgiven because you might imagine, well, it's Australia. They must have nuclear weapons. They're not a nuclear power. And hats off to Prime Minister Ardern of New Zealand. And she didn't join AUKUS because I don't know what the acronym would be like if there was a NZ in AUKUS. AUKUS. So it's not a violation of the non-proliferation.
Let's see. Comment from Scott. Scott Horton of antiwar.com said bin Laden was mainly concerned with retribution for atrocities. Hold on, shut my door. The neighbor dog a little loud. Atrocities against Palestine. Thoughts? I do remember hearing something about that. Yeah, how bin Laden, that was kind of one of his areas of concern. And of course, the United States plays a big role in, Israel being able to operate as the apartheid state that they are and treat, Palestinians as less than human and perpetuate the, genocide against them. So, I mean, I think that could definitely have played a part in it, for sure. I really hope this ends with Australia getting Chinese thorium reactors in 10 years. Yeah, that is pretty interesting. I was still a little bit skeptical. I guess I just have some reservations with anything regarding nuclear power or nuclear energy, but it does sound pretty interesting and promising. I think it they're supposed to produce a lot less nuclear waste, right, through these thorium reactors. So, I mean, it's pretty interesting. We'll see. Definitely, we'll see what happens with that thorium. What are your thoughts on that, Huzzah?
Although we don't care if we violate international law and so on, but it's not, because the nuclear submarines are only nuclear powered.
So it's a little different.
They're not going to carry nuclear weapons. Did you see that? That was amazing. I was like, wow, guys, you got the best. Like, there's 100 lawyers or 500 that went over the thing. This is how you have to say it, Joe. It's not a nuclear submarine. It's a nuclear powered submarine. We're going to create this alliance. AUKUS.
AUKUS. It reminds me of like Biden, how he was trying to, say he was campaigning that if the Democrats won the 2 Senate seats, was it in Georgia, right? Then, everybody would be getting their $2,000 checks. But then he was like, well, you actually got 600 when Trump, so I'm going to give you 14 and see how that kind of adds up to that. Kind of reminds me of what Vijay is talking about with these nuclear powered subs. Technically, it's not proliferating. Yeah, it's interesting.
And we're going to threaten the Chinese. Although, of course, they already had an alliance called the Quad, which is India, Japan, Australia, United States. They're going to meet this week in person, the leaders of these countries. Mr. Suga of Japan, Modi of India, that great democratic leader, Narendra Modi of India. The great large democracy in India, which has decided that Muslims, second-class citizens, also decided Kashmir don't need any rights, also decided journalists don't know.
Yeah, I think I saw recently, a couple weeks back, the Communist Party of India, like one of their offices was actually kind of ransacked and I think maybe even burned down in India. Pretty disturbing, right? Yeah. Modi, he's a real bastion for democracy.
We don't have them in Indian culture. Indian culture doesn't need journalism. It's a cultural relativist thing and so on. Journalists, they are criminal. It's a synonym for criminals.
Glad to hear.
They can be in jail. That's a better place for them and so on, right? They already have a platform called a Quad. But the problem with the Quad is it's not all the great settler colonial powers. Because this is the authentic alliance. This is the United States,
Australia,
the United Kingdom.
Yep.
Look at their names. Why do you need an article before the name of your country? It's not the India and the Japan. It should be the Australia and the United States and the United Kingdom. AUKUS.
AUKUS.
We've just been humiliated by the Afghans, but we're going to go to war against China.
AUKUS.
1.4 billion. The first point I want to make for you, and you must be wondering, what's the point? Is no left force in the world, no self-respecting left force should allow itself to be weaponized into this war against China. I don't care. I literally don't care what your assessment is of the Communist Party, of Xi Jinping. I don't even care if you're a racist against
90, which again has 90 million members, the Chinese Communist Party, CPC.
It's the Chinese people. I honestly don't care. But if you're a self-respecting human being, you should not want the world to enter a war where the United States, which is a nutty country, is willing to go to war against 1.4 billion people when it was just defeated by a country of 38 million. This is just about mathematics, guys. And let me tell you something. The Chinese have a much bigger army and navy and air force and nuclear weapons than the Afghans. Particularly, they have much more armaments than the Taliban. This is a really bad idea, guys. You need to go out there and campaign like hell against this war.
Yes.
And I really don't think...
And it's not China who is escalating tensions between these two nuclear-powered countries. It is the U.S., the last dying breaths of this U.S. empire, right? It's not China who is the aggressor here. China is trying to spread, development and industry and partner with all of these countries all around the world, while all the US exports is death, destruction, and sanctions, which obviously also cause death and destruction.
That this is an issue. I really don't think this is an issue of what you feel about the Chinese Revolution. I really don't think that's the point right now.
It's a matter of human survival.
Say a few things about what I think is happening in China, but that's not important. I could actually stop right now, because all I want from you.
Yeah, I saw the ASPI released that ridiculous report, trying to claim that China was committing genocide against the Uyghurs. And then you look at who funds the ASPI, like, oh, okay, that makes complete and total sense that they're, coming up with this same bullshit that people like, Adrian Zenz are, talking about, right?
All I'm asking of you is to campaign. I want you to campaign against this war.
Yep, I saw
I
that.
want you to join whatever platform exists in the world. The Chow Collective is a part of the No Cold War platform, nocoldwar.org. I want you to at least go to our website, sign that statement, take that statement to your neighbors, to your colleagues, to your friends. If you don't want to take the statement, talk to people. We don't need this war.
100%, man.
The world doesn't need this confrontation. The United Nations has said we need more collaboration in this period. We've got a pandemic.
Yep.
We have a climate catastrophe. 2.7 billion people don't know where their next meal is coming from.
That is insane.
And you tell me the most pressing issue for the United States, the United Kingdom, and Australia is to create bloody AUKUS.
Disgusting.
We've got a meeting coming up in Glasgow, the COP meeting for climate change. Where's the global alliance against the destruction of the planet? Where's that? 2.7 billion people are
busy
starving.
Creating AUKUS.
Which countries have come together to say we need to create a global alliance?
Not the AUKUS ones,
Fuscus,
not NATO.
Muscus, whatever the hell it's called, against hunger. Where's that? How do we take these people seriously?
You don't. You shouldn't.
How do we take Joe Biden seriously?
I know. He's a fucking hack.
How do we take Scott Morrison, of all people, mediocre person? How do we take Scott Morrison seriously?
What do you think of Scott Morrison, Huzzah? You're a little bit more familiar with them than I am.
Boris Johnson is a clown.
Yes.
If anybody thinks I'm a stupid, foolish person, and if they think Boris Johnson is this, I'll take stupid on myself, okay? I'll take a hit for you. But I will not accept the fact that I'm more a clown than Boris Johnson.
Fair enough.
I mean, how do these people have the right to take us into a catastrophic confrontation with a country like...
Again, if there was a war with China that the US instigated, like that would literally probably be the end of life as we know it, right? This is the stakes that Vijay Prashad is talking about. Jesus, yeah, Vaush is so fucking horrible, dude. That guy's just such a complete fucking hack. I don't know why. Only time I've consumed any of Vaush's content was to call out his bullshit, because he's just so horrible. Like how he was trying to, cover up for the U.S. war crimes in Syria, vis-a-vis the chemical weapons attack that, the Syrian forces, there's no evidence that they actually committed, etc. Yeah, Vaush is absolute garbage. Scott the fuckwit, there you go. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, that was the opinion you're going to have. Holiday or something. Darwin would be the target. Perth and Sydney. Interesting. Very interesting.
China, which has just helped eradicate
extreme poverty,
absolute poverty in that country.
That is a huge, massive accomplishment in a country of 1.4 billion people.
What gives us the right to do that? So, for the rest of my talk here with you, I want to say a few things about China. Not a huge amount. I've been recently going back and reading the work of Chinese intellectuals that I greatly admire. I greatly admire Wang Hui, for instance, who is a scholar of Chinese literature.
Yeah, I would like to definitely consume more content from Chinese, voices and revolutionaries. I've maybe halfway through Mao's Little Red Book, but I would definitely like to maybe, get some of the works of Xi Jinping or Deng Xiaoping to get their, perspective on how they see, socialism with Chinese characteristics.
Thought teaches at Tsinghua University. I greatly admire Li Bo, who teaches Chinese studies at Fudan. I greatly admire Zhang Weiwei, who's the founder of the Institute of Chinese Studies at Fudan. Well, Zhang Weiwei spent a lot of time in Geneva. You
can just tell how well read and well versed Vijay Prashad is on all these issues. It's pretty mind-boggling, honestly, his depth of breadth of knowledge.
The West, and so I greatly admire these people. Why? Because they're trying to understand the direction of their society. Years ago, in 2011, 10 years ago, Chen Enfu, who was then a senior scholar at the Chinese Academy of Advanced Studies in Beijing, Chen Enfu came to India. He gave a lecture in Trivandrum about the 7 schools of thought in China. It was so interesting, I had no idea.
Yeah, me either.
That there were 7 schools of thought in China. That
sounds interesting.
Because, there's a kind of incipient ignorance that people have about places like China. You just think of China, we talk of China like it's like the bog, There's the Chinese, China does this in China. It's 1.4 billion people, guys.
Huge,
do you
massive.
know how many people that is?
It's a lot.
Do you know what the population of the United States? It's
300,
4 times or 5 times the population
US
of the
pop
United
is
States.
what, 350
That's a lot
million?
Of people.
Yes.
In the United States, there's a lot of different opinions. There's post-structuralists and Foucauldians and, and Stalinists and, No, sorry, I meant, I'm talking about the United States. There's liberals and liberals
conservative
and neoliberals and conservative liberals and fascistic liberals and Trumpian liberals and, I forgot. Yeah. There are many contending schools of thought in the United States, but we somehow assume that in China, there's
just
Chinese.
One. Yeah.
There's one, there's the Mao period. And then there's a Deng period, and everybody's like Deng, Mao,
Deng.
and Xi Jinping. It's incredible,
liberals.
Right? It's like a racist belief that 1.4 billion people just sort of orient themselves like we are now
Chinese.
In the world of this thought. Everybody march to, right? Isn't that the way people talk about China? Am I wrong about this? This is not what I'm saying. I'm just channeling what I think people say, that I don't believe that. I don't want to be misunderstood because I know social media is a really cruel thing. People will say, do you know what he said? He said all Chinese think the same. Somebody's going to
cut out a little sound
bite. I just said that and they'll make that a thing, Social media is a really scary thing, right? Right? I am scared of social media because of this reason, right? Anyway, so Chen Enfu comes to Trivandrum, which is the capital of Kerala, a state governed by the Left Democratic Front, of which there are communist parties, and it's an amazing place in the world, 38 million people.
Mm-hmm.
They're not all communists. Please don't misunderstand that. There's a lot of people with terrible ideas. There's a big debate happening now because, again, everybody from Kerala isn't, we are communist. It's not like that. There's people of different views and so on. So we should never, idealize a place and think, oh, you're from Kerala, you must be a communist. No, it could be a right-wing nut. It's as much a possibility, right?
Yeah,
Meet somebody from China, they might be somebody who I'm a Chinese banker. I believe in Adam Smith and Milton
might be a
Friedman,
counter-revolutionary for
you're
sure.
as likely to meet a Milton Friedman supporter in China as you are a person who says, I think Mao is a great person and so on. So Chen and Fu said there are 7 contending schools of thought. I thought that's fascinating. He said there are liberals, people who think, this is funny, people who think Thomas Jefferson is the way forward. I was like, I'm not sure even in the, actually in the United States, there are a lot of people who think a slave owner like Thomas Jefferson is the way forward. So there are people there. And then he said there are revivalists or Maoists, there are traditional Marxists. And then, of course, the way we all do as intellectuals. And then there are innovative Marxists like him. And I like to think of myself as an innovative Marxist.
Shouldn't we all?
Because who wants to say, like, I'm an orthodox Marxist?
Yes.
I'm an innovative Marxist, and so on. 7 schools of thought. That's interesting. But it's not only that there are many schools of thought in China. That's only one of the issues. The other thing is there have been fierce debates inside China amongst intellectuals, amongst party members. When you have a communist party with hundreds of millions of members, they have tens of millions of opinions in different parts of the country. And there was a terrible decade in the 90s when debate and argument was hard to come by. Because it's not that there was no opinions allowed, because the right of the argument held the high ground. And it's at that point that Wang Hui, this great intellectual, thought seriously about the idea of confidence that a country has in its traditions. Why was Chinese intellectualism or the intellectual class, but also elements of the party, why?
So, Mike, how should we respond to the thought terminating cliche, we can't believe what the CCP says? Can't believe what the CCP says. I mean, don't believe what the CCP says. Believe what, there was I just actually put out a short video. There was a study done by the Harvard Ash Center that showed in 2016 that 95.5% of survey respondents in China had a favorable or highly favorable view of the government there. Say, okay, don't trust the CCP. Look at what actual people in China think of their government there. I'm much more inclined. I would be much more inclined to trust the CCP and what they say than the United States government, frankly. What about you, Mike? What do you say?
Why were they losing faith in their own traditions and looking to Washington, D.C., New York City, and so on, Harvard University for inspiration? Why were they looking to Thomas Jefferson to lead them forward after the 1990s? Why were they doing that? And so he went back and he reconstructed this 4-volume text on the history of Chinese thought, but I'm not getting into that. What I want to talk about is that even in this time, the left was trying to engage and find a way to break out of a relative rightward drift in Chinese society. In fact, this rightward drift had been detected by Deng Xiaoping in 1983.
Interesting.
When he said, there's a serious problem in our country. The poison of bourgeois thought has come back. This is in 83. Deng Xiaoping had a campaign against the poisons of bourgeois thought.
Good for them.
Engels, years ago, old Freddie. Marxist. Smartest Marxist there ever was. I love, what's great about Freddie Engels? When he died, he said, cremate me. I like that. That's great. And take my ashes to the beach and throw them into the ocean. There's no grave for Freddie anywhere.
That's kind of cool.
He was thrown, and there's a little plaque that says, we came and threw his ashes here. Fred Engels said,
that's what I would like. I would like my ashes spread at, important places that have have had an impact in my life, to let my family know that.
Before he died, he said, our socialist history is a history of zigzags. Because we're dealing with real people.
There are dealing with contradictions, trying to work through them, 100%.
Real people involved in socialist construction. And we carry with us the flotsam of confidence, lack of confidence, fear of the unknown.
Biases.
Because socialism is the unknown. We know wretchedness of hierarchy.
Capitalism.
We know inequality. We know all these things. We know what it's like to be oppressed. We don't know what it's like to be free.
Yes.
And we're scared of freedom.
Preach.
Let's be honest, okay? We're scared of freedom. We're scared of making a revolution. We don't want to make a catastrophic mistake. We allow the drift back.
Not surprised, man. PBS is just another neoliberal freaking hack. They call it, public broadcasting station, but you're not going to hear any dissenting voices on there that are, coming from an anti-capitalist or anti-imperialist lens. So not surprising that they took that down. We can't have any type of positive message out there, even if it's accurate and based in reality about what China is doing. I also saw a thing from I think Code Pink or something, not something. Maybe this is what it was about actually. Was that PBS had taken this down. Co-produced by PBS SoCal with the foundation led by Robert Lawrence Kuhn. It was a joint doco that didn't just trust CCP. Yeah, fair enough. So still up on CGTN. Okay, interesting. I'm gonna have to look into that. It does sound really very cool. Thanks for sharing, Hazal.
Back to the past to take place so fast. That undertow that pulls you back to the past is really strong. It's not like Deng Xiaoping was like, let's move back to the United States, restore capitalism. How many books I read with that title, Restoration of Capitalism? They were struggling with something, how to build socialism in a wretchedly poor country. That was the assignment. Wasn't easy.
No.
Punctually in Chinese history, you've had the Communist Party figure out they made enormous mistakes. What do we think about the Great Leap Forward? May not have been such a great idea. What do we think about the Cultural Revolution? Not sure. What do we think about the 78 reforms? Well, we may have gone too far. Experimentation is an interesting facet of Chinese communism. And I'm just going to give you one example of that and then come to Wang Hui's recent article in Xi Jinping, okay? Okay. I mean, unless you want me to end here and we have questions, because I know there's good questions and so on. When Bo Xilai was in charge of Chongqing, it's not about Bo Xilai, by the way. A lot is made about this person. It's about what happened in Chongqing. In Chongqing, they decided, let's experiment with, bringing back socialist culture. Let's experiment with creating democratic neighborhood organizations. Let's try to create.
I mean, a frontline neoliberal, I'd have to look into more of what they've done. I know they do have some decent stuff out there. I watched a documentary for one of my college classes. I think it was last quarter actually, about a frontline documentary about the kind of heroin epidemic that we have here in the US. But I know PBS does get a lot of funding from some really shady sources. I believe the Koch brothers, or one of them died, but they get funding from like Charles Koch or whatever Koch brother is still alive. Apparently PBS isn't public. That's what Taibbi was saying. You probably couldn't. I probably wouldn't consider it a public broadcast station. At this point, I'm going to do a quick Google while we listen to some more Vijay here.
Confidence in the masses in the direction of socialism. That was watched very carefully by the left of the party and by left intellectuals. They looked at what was happening in Chongqing carefully. That's not that Bo Xilai didn't have his own problems. He may have himself been corrupt and so on. That's not the point, okay? You don't need to personalize these issues. We're talking about the process. The process of the Chongqing experiment. It was a very interesting experiment in trying to develop direct democracy trying to bring people into the dynamic of history, and not that they feel I'm just a consumer. You know that feeling, like in America, where I don't know what it means to be a citizen. I'm just a consumer. Consumer activism. You ever heard that phrase? Such a strange phrase.
Yeah,
I'm a consumer activist. What the hell is that? I'm not a citizen.
Or ethical capitalism, right? Oxymoron.
I'm a consumer. You know, I want my when I pay taxes, I want something back for that. Have you heard that phrase? That's treating citizenship like a consumption agreement. You know, I pay taxes and then I want something back for those taxes. And I don't want lazy people to get my taxes for them. Have you heard that argument in the United States? You know, that kind of thing. That reduces the whole concept of citizenship to consumption. I find that very disturbing as a direction of US history. The move of democracy and citizenship into consumption-oriented thinking. You know, I pay taxes, I want this back. I need this. And I don't want somebody else to get my taxes. It's a very disturbing understanding of society and so on. It's hard to create citizens in the world because people have to actually learn how to do this thing. It's not intuitive, you know, to be involved. You know how in our neighborhoods and places, it's idealistic people, lefties and so on, who form committees and try to push the government, or it's people on the right, but they're minorities, you know. Most people have a passive relationship to democracy. In Chongqing, the idea was how to revive democratic action, public action. It was an interesting experiment. Xi Jinping watched this very, very carefully. From 2013 onwards, in China, there was an attempt to develop more public action. And actually, what I want to say...
Yeah, I just did a quick Google on PBS on their Wikipedia page. It said they got in trouble back in 1999, actually, for at least 3 public television stations were caught selling or trading their mailing lists with the DNC. Let's see. Then there's been some lawsuits there. So their funding is a combination of kind of public and private. So they have these like member station dues. So they're funded for the Corporation for Public why would it be a corporation if it's for public broadcasting? Donations from both private, Coke funds PBS. Let's see what that comes up. Yeah, how much did David Koch give to PBS? Wow. Okay, education from 1982 to 2013, Koch contributed 18.6 million, including 10 million to PBS. So there you go. There's some really fucked up, shady funding sources at PBS. So I wouldn't consider it a public broadcasting station myself.
Coming close to wrapping up, what I want to say is the reason in Wuhan they were able to tackle the COVID virus
amazingly
so rapidly wasn't just because of state action.
The last time I checked, this was last week, China had less than 6,000 people have died from the COVID virus compared to 600 plus thousand in the United States. Before it's all said and done, there'll probably be, frankly, over 1 million people, I wouldn't doubt, that have died in the US. So literally 100 times less people in China have died from COVID compared to China. Like that, compared to the US, that is just mind-boggling. Like capitalist death cult.
That's actually a misunderstanding of what they did in China. It's not just state action, it's public action. There were a lot of citizens groups, neighborhood groups, and so on that acted to try and track and trace, close the virus down, help people, give relief, and so on. That's the same reason why in Kerala, India, the virus rates were so much lower than the rest of India. Because again, public action, women's organizations.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like Australia's handled it pretty well too, right? Huzzah, like there haven't been huge, massive outbreaks. There hasn't been the level of death that we've experienced here in the US. So obviously seems like they're doing, something right there with regards to, the pandemic and COVID.
Student organization, youth organization, peasant organization, farmer organization, workers, they were out there, neighborhood to neighborhood, house to house. A 21-year-old, Arya Rajendran, was elected mayor of the largest city in Kerala, Trivandrum. She's 21 years old. The reason she won
impressive.
Was she was part of a youth team that went door to door conducting surveys. What is it that you need during the lockdown?
How cool
can
is
we
that?
help you, etc. That's how these young people made public action something noble in their society. Noble. You have to ennoble democracy. It doesn't happen by existing. It has to be made.
You have to do
Democracy has to be
action.
produced. It's a lot of hard work.
Yes.
And that's what we see coming out of the current development in China. That's how poverty, absolute poverty, was eradicated through the public action process. Recently, Wang Hui wrote an article last year, the same intellectual, who wrote during the most difficult time in China when right-wing thinking was dominant.
Anybody know where I could get a shirt similar to the one Vijay has here? Like, that thing just looks nice. Like, that's stylish. He pulls it off well. I don't know if it would look quite as good on me, but who knows? I like it. I like the look.
He recently wrote an article last year about revolutionary personality, the creation of revolutionary personality. I like that phrase, because in fact, what we're trying to do is we're trying to make everybody into a revolutionary.
Yes.
The point isn't to have like a great leader or a great party.
To have a great mass of leaders, a great mass of revolutionaries, right?
Anything. Xi Jinping doesn't walk around saying, "It is I, Xi Jinping."
It's we, it's me, it's us, it's everybody, it's the people, it's the masses.
Who saved China from the scourge of COVID-19. I mean, the guy doesn't talk like that. It's public action.
That's how, like a politician in the US, like Trump would talk, right?
Enables a society to come together to tackle a pandemic.
And
Let's
a cardigan.
compare what the Chinese did with what India had to succumb.
Is that what this is called? This type of outfit? Is that a cardigan? I'm not super up on my fashion terminology.
To what the United States succumbed to, what the United Kingdom succumbed to. You want to go to war against China, but you yourself couldn't handle the pandemic. You want to go to war against China in the name of a democracy you don't have.
Yes, and have never had in the United States.
What you have is a consumerocracy. You don't have a democracy. Your people don't feel alive to a project. Just when the Chinese feel like they've come alive to a project, you call that life authoritarianism. You call that life authoritarianism. Who puts its journalists in jail? What?
The United States. Who has the world's biggest prison population? The United States. Who has the world's largest military? I believe the United States spends more on military, aka death and destruction, than the next 10 countries combined. Who spends more on healthcare than any country in the world, yet has all of these horrible health outcomes? The United States.
Why is Julian Assange in Belmarsh?
Preach.
Why are so many Indian activists and journalists in jail?
In India, yeah.
Why is the Enforcement Directorate in India knocking at the door of journalist houses? How easy it is for these countries to sit on some abstract definition of democracy and criticize 1.4 billion people who are in the middle of a giant experiment.
Yes.
Again, I don't expect you to believe anything I said in the second part of my remarks here. I don't even care if you agree with me.
100%.
But I want you to leave the People's Forum. 3 years old now. You know that? People.
Right. Assange he's a citizen of Australia, correct? Is the Australian government, I haven't seen them, maybe I missed it, have they pushed back at all against the US? I know you said, I think, Huzzah, previously that there's a lot of people in Australia who have spoken out in support of Assange. Does that extend to people in government? Kind of curious about that.
People's Forum just had an anniversary, 3 years old. I want you to leave the People's Forum, the greatest institution in New York City. I want you to leave the People's Forum committed, not to being against the Cold War against China. I don't care what you think. I want you to campaign against it. I want you to join Cut the Pentagon. I want you to get involved. It's not enough to believe things, guys. We have to build democracy. The bourgeoisie is not going to donate democracy to you. You have to take
to be wrestled from their cold dead hands, right?
Democracy. The Soros Foundation isn't going to give you a grant for democracy. You have to seize democracy. You have to seize democracy by acting together. It's called public action.
Yep.
And if anybody needs it, the United States does. So, see you on the streets. Thanks a lot.
And I'm assuming this is Q&A time. Then they'll be like, well, is he really a communist and a Marxist? He has a smartphone.
Okay. We have about 10 minutes of interaction, if that's okay.
What is 7 years jail for taking a photo? What is Pine Gap? Because I'm not familiar. Is that something in Australia? I'm kind of ignorant about that. Let me know in the chat there.
And I have a feeling somebody has a mic
that can get passed out.
We're going to have... Are you ready already with your question? Prepared? Your hand is halfway there between the fist in the air and a hand in the air. Okay, let's start over there. My favorite questioner, right here. We'll start with that.
Okay, I'll be brief. Thank you so much. It's actually a really nice way to...
okay.
Since you ended on questions of praxis, that's exactly
where
my questions kind of began to lead in. I've been thinking just a lot. You talked a lot about Chinese public action, and I'm thinking a lot about kind of how public action operates, not just for the consolidation, legitimation of like party building, but also in the process of like building the party itself. So like, you've talked a few times in some different talks about like mutual aid projects in the West and how that popped up in response to COVID. And especially with like King's Chalk's earlier talk, I've been thinking constantly about like how poverty alleviation in China, what we should be doing in the West is essentially like, we should be building these kinds of similar mass public systems, you know, engendered, like acted out by the people, you know, with the agency of the people, like at the helm of it. And by meeting material needs, then we can actually begin to establish a system that can, you know, further than expand those kinds of programs. So my basic question is just along the lines of like
the Black Panther Party was all about survival pending revolution. So the Black Panther Party was very much about meeting the needs of the people, whether it was, you know, the free food program, which they instituted, and why the FBI actually thought they were the biggest threat was because they were, you know, literally feeding people, or, you know, the police, you know, the cop watch that they did, etc. So yeah, survival pending revolution, right?
Cold War campaigning, how that fits into like the developing mutual aid frameworks that, you know, continue to like, we've been working on them for years now in the US, and they keep growing. And I think that's the revolutionary direction that we're going to be building in, because that's what's gaining legitimacy, because it's meeting the needs of people, like the way that the Chinese project does for the Chinese people. And in that capacity, I was wondering about just your general thoughts, suggestions about how we can begin to, you know, further, you know, through the mutual aid work, how we can develop into different political structures, and how we can, you know, not just do mutual aid, not just, you know, get food to people, but make it clear that by getting food to people and the systems that get food to people and the systems that don't leave people hungry are those systems that necessitate anti-imperialism and necessitate internationalism with the Chinese people and the socialism, the Chinese project.
Firstly, I would say, does everybody watch Breakthrough News? Yeah, okay. Yeah. You should watch Breakthrough News. Breakthrough News had a story about, I think it was Philadelphia, where there was a project of feeding the hungry. And I found that a very interesting project, guys, because, you see, I don't have the answer to your question, because the answer to your question will become clear when you're doing what they're doing.
In the community.
You understand?
Yeah.
Because as you build contacts and you build the fiber of society, you'll know how to talk to people.
Yeah, and just because something worked very well in one country, that doesn't mean it's going to work in a, different context. You need that concrete analysis of the concrete conditions to see what actually will work.
People. There's no formula. As people are coming to you and the fiber of society is being built because it's frazzled, right? Then people can think, oh yeah, okay, interesting what you're talking about, the China thing. I never thought about it. Why would anybody listen to you if the fabric of your relations to other people is broken? So the problem with the American left, if I might say it a little abstractly,
yes, please,
is that it's hard to organize in a society where the fabric of society is not so clear.
And it's so just very individualistic here in the US, like through and through.
It's very hard to organize. So you got to participate in building the fabric. You can't wait for the fabric to be built by the liberals and then you accelerate to socialism. Doesn't work like that. I mean, they're never going to build the fabric of society, guys. Ask Bill Clinton, the great standard bearer of US liberalism. By the way, good question. Yeah. Anybody else? Somebody in the... Oh, okay. Right there. Second row. Yeah.
And I'd love if Vijay came and gave a talk in my neck of the woods up here in the Pacific Northwest. I would definitely be getting some tickets for that.
So thank you for talking. I really appreciated what you were saying about how we are afraid of being free. I am just wondering what suggestions do you have to keep up our revolutionary optimism when I've been doing this work since the Iraq War? And yes, we have made a lot of progress, but we do get horribly burnt out and we're up against this awful war machine and we're living in the belly of the beast. How do we keep up that revolutionary
capitalist
optimism?
death
There are
cult.
days where
It's imperial core.
we're burned out. We can't do this anymore. We need to take a break. But there are people they're starving and the war machine keeps on running. How do we keep that optimism?
Well, on the break question, I can't help you. I have a problem with that personally. I'll acknowledge it publicly. It's a problem, okay? But I'm going to say something that you already know because you've done this for a while. One of the reasons we join parties or projects or groups
to be a part of something
is that we know we get rid of this idea that we are indispensable. You know that feeling? And I hate it. I know this feeling when if I miss a demonstration, I feel terrible. Like I wasn't there, But it's not like your presence is so essential. I stayed home and I watched Ozarks on TV or whatever the hell, I mean, you're allowed to relax and, do whatever you like to do when you relax, right? I mean, part of the reason joining a political organization is essential isn't just to strengthen our politics, many fingers is not as strong as a closed, blah, blah, blah. It's not only that. It's also to let you feel like you're part of a project, not that you're individually trying to save the world.
For sure. Part of
There's
that
a little
common
bit in
good.
a broken society, the left develops a kind of messiah complex, individually.
Just
Like,
takes me. I can do it. I can do
that.
everything. Yeah.
You gotta I'm telling you, it's bizarre for me to say this, but sometimes it's okay to say, look, I can't be involved in this. I'm going to take a break and so on. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I know that what happens in our culture, and by that I mean our international left culture, because there is something similar in our international left culture. A lot of pressure is put on each other. You got to do this, got to do that, got to show up for this. That phrase, show up. You got to show up, you got to show up. I know that. But look, I'm 54 years old. I didn't even know which Iraq war you were talking about because, there's like 2 of them, 8 of them. I don't even know after a point, right, Rafiq? I mean, which Iraq war? Like the Iran-Iraq war, Iraq number 1 war, Iraq number 2 war. And you know how it is? We call these Iraq war. It's not a bloody Iraq war. It's a U.S. war. It's a U.S. war.
Against
it's a US
Iraq.
war,
Yeah.
right? Anyway, but still, you got to be a long distance runner. I need you there for a long time. and we've got lots of people who've been there longer than I. And
it's a good point. Yeah, you got to make sure you're not getting super burnt out. You got to find ways to recharge, whatever that is, whatever works for you, whether it's, I don't know, exercise, growing food, reading, spending time with family, doing mutual aid, whatever it is that helps rejuvenate you so you're able to continue in this struggle. Super, super important.
So on. We take inspiration and hope in the fact that we believe in the values that we were taught. All the values of the left aren't alien to broad human civilization. Like nothing in Marxism is alien to humanity. We believe in equality, we believe in fairness,
justice.
We believe that people should be, not hungry,
have a house, water, food, healthcare, etc.
People should have shoes. I recently discovered that 1 billion people in the planet don't have shoes. 1 billion people.
That's insane.
That disturbed me. It disturbed me more than that almost 3 billion can't eat. I don't know why, but that really disturbed me a lot. That 1 billion people don't have shoes. And the reason that disturbed me is that last year, global footwear, the industry, made 23 billion shoes. We made 23
Was it going to the people that needed it, right?
billion shoes in 2020, and yet 1 billion people don't have shoes. How many pairs of shoes do we have? And I know today I'm wearing my nice sneakers, so I'm hiding them. I'm hiding them as I say that, okay? Because look, there's an old joke, okay? They always say, communists want to abolish first class, right? And I say, no, we want to abolish second class, right?
Yes. You want to have the material conditions as such that everybody's standard of living is so high, there no longer be classes. And if you don't have a class society, you don't need a state.
Right. Okay. Somebody else. There's a few hands, but several over there, one over there. Let's go back and then we'll come back. Yeah. Yeah, we want to abolish second class. You get that, right? Yeah. Everybody deserves a break. Yeah.
100%.
I definitely, I agree with so many in the history of communism and Marxist thinking and that tradition have emphasized the real protracted nature of people's struggle, of people's war, of these processes that will eventually lead to liberation. But I also want to pose a quote from Field Marshal of the Black Panther Party, George Jackson, who said,
"Ooh, love George Jackson.
How do you make long-term struggle relevant to those who expect to die tomorrow?"
Wow.
In regards to this struggle against the Cold War, and in regards to this struggle against capitalism that we know will be protracted, in our mass work, how do we make long-term struggle appealing and relevant to those who expect to die tomorrow?
That's a good question. Deep.
I mean, the question is, what are you struggling for? Revolutionaries like us are not always struggling just for ourselves. We're struggling for the sake of our collective.
Yeah, because, I frankly have a pretty high standard of living, but I realize there's millions, tens of millions of people in the US who aren't as lucky, and globally, obviously, even worse. Like you said, 2.7 billion people in the world don't have enough food to eat. That massive amount that don't have shoes.
Project, in a big, giant way, we're struggling for humanity and so on and so forth, right? We're not struggling only to better things for ourselves, although we're trying. I'm one of those people, my friend, that doesn't believe that we're waiting for, how people talk, there'll never be a revolution in my life, it'll be later. Oh my God, I'm the opposite of that. I'm the complete opposite.
Gotta have some optimism, or right? Like, what's the point
of that? Like, I hate it when people say I'm in it for the struggle. I am not in it for the struggle. The struggle is exhausting.
Yeah.
I don't want this to continue forever. I hate this. How many meetings do I have to go for strategy and all these absurd debates and ideas and hate speeches of the, yeah. I want socialism. That's what I want. I don't want an anti-capitalist struggle. I'm not interested in that. Right? I'm 54 years old, so it's possible. But even if I was 64 or 74, I would still think it's possible. Because you never know, Do you think the people sitting in Zimmerwald in Switzerland in, 1915, 16, Lenin do you think they were like, we're going to make comrades? Next year,
Russian Revolution, baby.
in St. Petersburg.
USSR.
Comrades, next year in St. Petersburg. Bukharin, get ready to write the ABCs of communism. Because we will need to mass produce that sucker and get every little Soviet kid to read that book, which is so boring. You better do it. And send a message to Stalin that he has to start writing the short course on the history of the CPUSA-B. No, they thought this is never going to happen. We're like 16 of us sitting here. And we're going to discuss the long-term strategy, comrades. If you ever read the Zimmerwald Declaration, you'll realize they had no clue. Next year, Lenin, you're going to be in a SEAL train. Thanks to the Germans, and they're going to send you and so on and so forth. And then you'll be writing State and Revolution on your lap in a toilet somewhere in Finland.
It's also a really good book by Lenin, State and Revolution.
We don't know what's going to happen. So we can't have this long-term perspectivism. We got to fight to win. That's the point. Because, the planet can be destroyed. Do you feel that sometimes? Like the planet can be destroyed. Yeah. Sometimes in my head, I feel like that guy in a city in every country in the world that carries a sign that says the end of the world is nigh. And they not even have to be a Christian. They can be like a radical environmentalist. Sometimes in my head, I feel like that guy. And then I have to control myself and say, relax, we're going to win. It's okay. We will win before we allow them to annihilate us. We will win. We have to win.
We have to.
We have to fight so hard that we win. There's no point leaving the room here and saying, he was interesting on the Cold War. Yeah, I thought that was interesting. This is not a bloody movie. Go eat popcorn and then have a discussion at the bar. What do you think about what he said about? I don't give a shit what you thought about this or that or what I said. I need you to go out there and campaign against this war. I need you to fight to build socialism. I don't need you to discuss and nitpick about little things I said about Wang Hui and Li Bo and whatever the hell. What was his opinion actually about Xi Jinping? What does it matter? Really, what does it matter? What matters is what are you going to do, my friend? What are you going to do? What are you going to do?
What are you going to do?
Right?
It's a great question.
Okay. Now, this is the 3rd year anniversary of the People's Forum. And if I was a different person and if you were all creative people, I would have asked us to sing happy birthday to the People's Forum. So I'm not going to say that. But I want you in the next 10 minutes, if you run into anybody who has a name tag which says staff on it, and because it's COVID, I suppose it would be inappropriate for me to say go and hug them. But I want you to go up to people where it says staff, and I'd like you to thank them. Because I want to thank them for allowing me into the People's Forum family now and before. Thanks a lot.
Wow. Great talk there. Not super surprising. Again, Vijay Prashad. Just wonderful speaker. Seems to just be a great human overall. Really appreciate his perspective. At the movie somewhere, still popcorn. Don't you stand in your chair. Nice. But yeah, what are we gonna do? You gotta fight like hell, like Vijay was saying. I added that no Cold War site in the documents. I'm going to sign up, put my name on it. It says on the thing, new Cold War against China is against the interests of humanity completely. If we have that the U.S. instigates a hot war against China, this Cold War could obviously escalate to that pretty quickly, could spell the end of life for the human species as we know it on the planet. So stakes are very high. sign the petition, get other people to sign the petition, get involved in your community as much as possible around, you know, all these important issues that are happening. Like the stream if you haven't already. That helps with the YouTube algorithms. I'll be back tomorrow night around 9:30 talking about how liberal feminism is actually supports imperialism, and we don't need any more imperialism, so we got to oppose liberal feminism. And probably talking about some other stuff as well. I almost did a live stream talking about AOC and her kind of nothing burger word salad statement, her defending, not even really defending, just again a word salad about why she voted present for that funding of the Iron Dome went to the tune of $1 billion. But I felt like this was more kind of important and timely, and I think I made the right choice. Anyways, hope this finds you well. Have a good night, rest of your day, evening, morning, wherever this finds you at in the world. All power to the people. Peace. Much love.